Okay, it is April 22nd, 2021. My name is Matt Ownby. I created the Daphne Laserdisc emulator and also the Dexter Laserdisc replacement player. And with me here is Rick Dyer, who created the original Dragon's Lair arcade game in 1983. Rick?
I really want to say thank you for flying all the way out here and getting that 35-year-old machine operating. What happened was we were setting up this home in Spokane, and I had come up with an idea of maybe the first vacation rental that has its own private arcade in it. And as I was bouncing the idea among my staff and so forth, they said, well, you got to have a Dragon's Lair if you're going to have an arcade. I said, yeah. But I said, I only have one machine that's been in storage for about at least 35 years, and I've never even gone into it to get it. And they said, well, you better get it out. So long story short is I did. And so anyway, I had a technician in San Diego who services my pinball machine every once in a while, but they also have their own coin-op business still. And so they came out, and I was talking about, I said, well, the good news is you got the laser disc that's 35 years old and the machine to work, but it's glitching, but it's working. And what do I do when the laser disc player goes out? And he goes, well, the trouble is they don't make these anymore. So, and then he goes, but there's a guy who made a board, solid state, that replaced the laser disc. And I just go, what? That was the first time that I had ever heard of that. And I said, there's someone who's replaced the laser disc player? He said, yeah, it's just plug and play. You just plug the laser disc cable into the board and it replaces it. And I said, oh my gosh, so that gives Dragon's Lair immortality. And I said that otherwise it's something that will literally disappear without a trace. And someone has done that, and he said, yeah. And I said, well, how do I find him? And he said, well, let me give me a second here. And so he pulled up your website on the board, and you, and he showed this to me, and I said, well, can you share that contact with me? So he sent it over to my phone, and then I called you. And
Well, you first emailed me because I have like this,
oh, that's right,
anonymous spam filtering email system. So you emailed me and said, I'm interested in your Dexter, and then you signed your email, a certain way, like kind regards or something. And I'm like, man, that looks really familiar. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is Rick Dyer. Holy cow! And then you're like, by the way, I created Dragon's Lair. I'm like, I know that. So we actually, 20 years ago, we briefly met at the Classic Gaming Expo in Las Vegas. So it probably was like 2001. That was when you were, that might have been like a year or two before Dragon's Lair 3D, but for some reason you, Don Bluth, Gary Goldman, and John Pomeroy came to that conference and sold posters, and we stood in line. I happened to have so I had my Theros Quest disc, I had my Dragon's Lair disc, and so I had all of you guys sign Dragon's Lair, and then I had you sign my Theros Quest, and you had no idea who I was, and I leaned in and I'm like, hey Rick, do you still have any Halcyon stuff lying around? I'd love to get my hands on that. And you're like, I'm not gonna give Halcyon stuff to this stranger.
Oh, that's right. Actually, speaking of that, I brought that one Halcyon that's still in the box I was telling you about.
Yeah.
In the office, so it's sitting in the office. So if you're still interested, I'll make arrangements.
Oh, I'm definitely interested.
See.
Now, what office are we talking about?
My office in San Diego.
Okay, yeah.
But I brought, that was in that storage vault with the original Dragon's Lair. So anyway, that, thanks to that technician telling me about you, I would have had no idea that you had created something like this, which is impressive. And as I understood, it took you 8 years. Wow.
Yeah, so what happened was I was at California Extreme around 2008, and I always came for the Laserdisc games, and there was like a super rare Laserdisc game that was not working at that show, and my friends and I were kind of sitting around thinking, this is a bummer that these games that we love aren't working, and we kind of started brainstorming at that show that, hey, we should look into making a solid state replacement for these games. And I was like, man, that would be so much work. I don't even want to tackle that, because that would be so much research and so much money and so much time. And then I thought, well, maybe I could tackle Dragon's Lair, because Dragon's Lair is like a relatively simple Laserdisc game. So I got Dragon's Lair working, and then I just started adding more and more games. And by the way, I also have it working with Time Traveler.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No. Like yesterday on Facebook, someone received a Dexter, put it inside of his Time Traveler, and posted a video, and there was like 30 people that were liking it. They're like, this is awesome. Love this game.
Oh my gosh. There is a fellow, call it reverse, he's been chasing me for 2 years because he's organizing, I think it's like a 30-year reunion, and he's inviting all the original cast, and he's been trying to get me to come for obvious reasons, because I invented the hologram.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly have been very reluctant, because I try to stay out of publicity and press and media. But anyway, he's been working on this for at least 2 or 3 years, and he's actually tracked down and assembled most of the original staff on the hologram time traveler. And I think he's planning on having that reunion this September.
Now, when you say staff, are you talking about the actors? Are you talking about the programmers, or what do you mean staff?
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah, to come. So anyway, that's pretty interesting that you.
How many people worked on that game? I mean, as far as programming
Hundreds. Like just the auditions, when we did the auditions for Hologram Time Travel, because we're getting off subject here. I don't know if you
That's okay.
But there were thousands of people. They were wrapped outside the building in downtown San Diego for blocks, waiting for the audition, and of course only a few of them made it, but you know, I guess they call it a casting call. but I was just going, wow.
And that game, this kind of segues back into Thayer's Quest. So Time Traveler, for a few of the scenes, and I know it's been like 30 years or whatever, but like some of the scenes where the wizard in the purple outfit is, you know, giving the player hints about what to do. You should have done this. You should have moved left. So that actually has 2 audio tracks. It has, like, you know, the wizard says something different in the left channel and something different in the right channel. And that's kind of similar to what Thayer's Quest does, where each scene had 2 audio tracks, you know, like the audio track you get when you visit the scene for the first time, and the audio track that you get when you visit the scene for the second time. So I'm assuming that's not a coincidence that both those games kind of use that same trick.
No coincidence at all. Matter of fact, we had a few members that had worked on both games.
Oh, really?
On that production, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're able to retain, you know, stay in contact with people from 1983 to what was Time Traveler 91 or something?
Yeah, right around there.
You got the same people working on the game?
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So, but yeah, if you have 2 audio tracks, then why not use them both? Because that way, if you come back to the character a second time, they can tell you something new or different or interesting that maybe you didn't hear the first time, or maybe you discounted them in the beginning, and you come back and they tell you something. Whoa, that's great. You know.
So do you remember the scene with Nigel the Huntsman?
Sure.
Who are you? Nigel the Huntsman. So I remember playing Thayer's Quest in the arcade, and I visited him the first time, and he's like, come back sometime and I'll tell you a story. So I came back, and then he told me a story, and I was like, oh crap, I gotta pay attention to what he's saying. This is crucial to the game. That's just a random thought I had. Oh fellow, Nigel the Huntsman. Yeah, I love Thayer's Quest. Did you? Thayer's Quest is kind of like a choose your own adventure book put in a video game. Did you choose your own adventure books, or what gave you the idea to do Thayer's Quest?
It was inspired by, what was that very first text-based game?
Zork?
No, it was before Zork. It was circulating around the university computers, and you could type in anything you wanted to, and it would come back with a response and tell you where you went and what you had to do. I'm not thinking of the name. Tonight, when I go to bed, or when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll remember the name, but I'm not thinking of it right now. But yeah, that reminded me of that genre. So that was, that's what we were trying to create, was in visual instead of just text. And we came up with so many versions of it. But we couldn't find one that was economically producible. They were all would have been too expensive machines to do something like that. And of course, eventually that brought in Dragon's Lair.
How did Thayer's Quest bring in Dragon's Lair?
Well, we were working on a choose your own path type of genre, which is a very slow-paced game. And one of the coin-op manufacturers we were doing development for, he was interested, but he's saying that game's way too slow for arcade. The kids want action. They want to move.
They need a constant threat to keep them.
Yeah, moving. To keep them going, and so you need to come up with something that's action oriented, and that spawned the idea for Dragon's Lair. But I will tell you, this is something that's you probably wouldn't hear about, but once Dragon's Lair got started really fast, and it was a situation we later learned that each of our partners had an urgent need to get going on this project for different reasons, and so Don Bluth, for example, still had his animation staff, but they needed something to do quick.
Okay.
And so we had our game designers and we had writers, and there were a total of about 8 or 10 of them, and each one of them had an assignment each night, what they had to try and come up with. And then what would happen is they would all meet in one room together and had to pitch their idea for what became known as Dragon's Lair. And it was a grueling, arduous situation for those people, because each one had their baby, so to speak, and presented it, and the rest of the group would tear it apart and everything that they didn't like about it. So
when you say present the idea, are you talking about the overall game, or are you talking about each scene?
Each scene.
Okay, so like the snakes from the ceiling,
or the giddy goons.
The giddy goons.
Each scene had to be painstakingly staged and analyzed. Is it fun? Is there enough action? Does it work within the limitations of a laser disc? and in terms of the programming.
And was that Don Bluth's team or was that your team?
That was our team.
So your team came up with the ideas for the scene and then he animated it?
That's correct.
Oh, I assumed that
No.
he came up with the ideas. So your guys came up with like the Boulder Trench stuff and the Black Knight,
Right,
the Black Knight
right,
and stuff.
right. But that created additional friction because first of all, you have to remember, creative people have very big egos. They do, and like when I'm working with a creative staff, I have to be very careful. My analogy is I have to treat each one like a thoroughbred. They want to run hard, and if it's their idea, they're going to run really hard with it because it's their baby. Mm-hmm. And you have to give them a range that they have to work within, but give them enough room for them to carry the ball and let it evolve. And so when you put 8 or 10 of those people in the same room, holy mackerel, that creates a lot of stress. And I have to say that by the end of Dragon's Lair, those people hated each other. I was very sympathetic, but it had to be grueling because it had to work. And not only that, unlike Hollywood films or animation where everything is already figured out to the 10th degree before it ever gets to animation, this was being done on the fly. They had close to 300 animators in Hollywood that needed something to do, and with an amazing payroll to go with it, and so the pressure was on us to be feeding the animation team. And then you asked the question about Don. That actually, he was changing the scripts that had been agreed upon by our teams of each scene. And so what came back was sometimes people were going, "What the hell did he do? Look at this!" And again, because they don't know animation. They're thinking of it from a game design and the mechanics and so forth. So, but Don's focus was on the animation. How the heck am I going to animate this? And how am I going to stage this? And how am I going to move these characters? And how am I going to be able to get it done on a reasonable budget? And they want to be able to reuse these cells because they were doing traditional hand-painted cells. No computer programming didn't exist in 1983. Right. And so the amount of work, labor, and money that was burning through, Don had to change a lot of the game designs. So when it came back to us animated, our engineers and our game designers and our staff, oftentimes, not probably often, they were having to go, what the hell do we do with this? How are we going to get the gameplay in this, and how are we going to work this? Because sometimes it came back spot on, sometimes it had little modifications, other times it had complete overhauls where you like, is this the scene that we sent in? And so that it was a matter of each of the disciplines were having to struggle with each other, and it was having to be done on the fly because we were up against huge financial penalties anytime something got delayed, and we were also in a race with all the other competitors to be the first one to come out with a successful game, which turned out to be Dragon's Lair.
Okay. And did Space Ace follow the same format where you designed the levels and then they animated it, or how did Space Ace?
It was more of the same. And of course, Space Ace cost 50% more than Dragon's Lair, which was the most expensive game ever made in coin-op history.
Was that because of the alternate paths with like Dexter being able to energize or not energize.
Yeah, it was that, and also they couldn't keep paying the low wages that they were paying on the first go around.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's like if you got a hit, then everybody.
It's like, and then of course then the laziness players stopped working and then the industry collapsed and
Sad story.
sad day.
So.
All right, well we're pretty much out of time. Do you have any?
You're more than out of time.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for me?
No. Well, I don't. I do, but you know what? When you come back, if you want, we can just chat and do it again.
All right, that sounds awesome. Okay, thanks, Rick. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.